am your goddess Nesca here with Trucker Man. We're reacting to...
The Cold War, everything insane about the Cold War by Big Tugg.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Whoever made the Sasuke figure didn't care about making it either.
What do you think?
It looks so trashy.
Alright, so let's learn about everything insane about the Cold War.
I don't care. What is the Cold War?
It was pretty much a fight between... It was a non-fighting war between Russia and the U.S. from the late 40s to about 91.
Really?
Ugly mother big your mother is a glorious I can't say those things on this website, but if you head over to extratug.com, you can hear all of that in its exclusive glory. All right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna talk about it. I've been ignoring it for a very long time, and it keeps coming up, and I feel like I have to mention it, so I'm gonna go really hard on this one. So the cool thing about this channel is I don't have a theme or consistent content. Like I can talk about whatever I want. I talked about little cute animals, then I talked about how The Simpsons predicted the end of the world. Like it doesn't matter what I do, you people will watch it. Well, within reason. I appreciate. That's not me saying like I'm a god. Like I appreciate you guys turning up, but I don't. You guys don't care what I do. But somehow, no matter what I talk about, it always seems like the Cold War keeps popping up. It's like that one friend that's a friend of your friend, but every time you throw a house party, that dude shows up even though you didn't really invite him, and he totally kind of sucks. And at first it was annoying, and then it became scary because I felt like I was being cursed by Stalin. But the more it came up, the more I realized it was extremely important to our understanding of, like, you know, the world right now. And that got me thinking, maybe I need to tear down the Berlin Wall that surrounds my heart. Every time it came up, I'd be a little bit pissed, but no longer. I'm gonna appreciate what the Cold War is and what it did. Not all the killing, not all the death, but besides that, so I'm gonna make a whole video dedicated to this but the problem is, it's really big and long, and there's technically like no real beginning or end of this thing, so this video is gonna be long. And don't be pissed at me because you guys in the comment section said make longer videos. I want to fall asleep to your videos, and that one hurt my feelings, but two, it's good to get for the views for the YouTube, so whatever.
But first, let's do an ad!
Personally, I find it offensive that TV shows told me that my skin would stop getting acne after pubescence. To this day, I get such... That's super helpful. So if you're interested, head to geolog.ie. It spells geology /Big Tugg, or click the link in the description, which will head you directly to Geology's Clear System lineup. And it's also available at Target, if you were wondering. Geology, fixing skin like an overachieving taxidermist.
You didn't fix it.
Don't know if they want me to say that, but it's a good joke. I'm going to be breaking down everything weird that happened in the Cold War. And I'm not going to be talking about the boring history because you can just go watch Ken Burns or something. I'm not that. The Cold War is full of drama, and it's full of will they, won't theys, and it's all about proxy wars, nuclear bombs, sexpionage, and two-headed dogs. So let's just I'm getting right into it.
What?
I saw a two-headed dog.
You're just saying a lot of random stuff.
Everything weird about the Cold War.
Oh, yeah, I did it.
So most of us know the broad strokes of the Cold War, even if it's just from movies like, I don't know, Rocky IV and Miracle. Oh my god, how good is the movie Miracle? Opportunities, boys. I quote that all the time when I'm playing Rocket League, and no one knows what I'm talking about. Even if the Russians make Cold War sports movies like Going Vertical, a film about the USSR's gold medal winning 1972 Olympic basketball team, it does seem odd that there are so many movies about sports and the Cold War. Like, that crossover seems to be happening a lot for some reason, but it turns out that's actually because of a concept called sports diplomacy. Sports diplomacy is the idea that sports can influence politics or the perception of political power, and this concept is practically tailor-made for the Cold War because this was a conflict that saw no direct fighting. In its essence, the Cold War was practically a dick measuring / pissing contest between the Soviet Union and the United States. The lore stretches all the way back to World War II, where the US and the Soviet Union were kind of like enemies, but also friends. They were frenemies. The Soviets started off World War II by colluding with the Germans, taking advantage of Nazi forces destabilizing Europe in order to occupy and annex territories that would eventually make up the USSR. But then Hitler hit him with the old, actually, you know what, dude, switcheroo. I'm sorry, I'm gonna attack you now. I'm gonna invade you, because that seems like the move. And the Soviets were like, okay, Britain, you chill? We gonna be chill? And Britain was like, I don't know, dude. Yeah, sure. If you're gonna fight against the Germans, whatever. You got a lot of people. And because the Soviets became friends with the British people were friends with America, so tangentially we were chill. And America jumped in.
It was basically the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Ah, okay, okay.
To a bit is in the ass.
Boogie.
Into the World War after the Japanese bombed Pearl.
Because they've decided, okay, we'll learn from you and make weapons like nuclear.
Oh, basically take our technologies.
Yeah.
Pearl Harbor, and that wasn't so cool. But this is not a video about World War II. I don't know what I'm doing right now. But even during the war, there were tensions simmering just below the surface, including the USSR's refusal to aid the Polish army and the US excluding the Soviets from negotiations with Germany. After the US dropped atomic bombs in Japan in 1945, everyone said, "Oh, we're done. We're done? Holy sh**. The war was over, and the uneasy alliance between Russia and America became immediately paranoid, and not good. Many historians look at the decision to bomb Japan as a catalyst for the Cold War. Japan's defeat was all but certain, and the Empire...
By chance, did this have anything to do with the whole, moon stuff?
Yeah, that's why we did the space race.
Because of the Cold War?
Yeah.
Ah.
Emperor of Japan was like, we're done, you don't have to do anything, but America... said, F you, kinda, pretty much. The US demanded unconditional surrender, meaning, like, when this thing's over, we're not gonna debate anything. We won, you lose, you gotta do everything we say. And they were like, I don't know if we wanna do that, and we were like, bombs! Bomb them! Many even argued that dropping the atomic bombs was a show of power by...
By the way, Harry Truman was actually from Independence, Missouri. He has a presidential library up there I've never been to.
Huh. That's so interesting.
President Truman, and that nuclear bombs were used in a part to keep Soviets from gaining territory in the Pacific. So, like, it was...
Oh, right. The Cold War was basically we were threatening each other with nuclear stuff-a-dee-doos.
Yeah. Think of Fallout, but without the technology.
You know, it was to f up the Japanese people, but it was also like, hey, Russia, I know you're right up there, and we, you know, don't come over here. We're dropping crazy shit. We're microwaving people. But whatever the exact motivations were, the fallout from the atomic bomb created the perfect conditions for the Cold War. By the end of World War II, the US and USSR had built up a laundry list of animosities. That's the word I was trying to say. But more than any single incident, the root for the Cold War was an ideological one. Both countries were, like, fist-pumping the propaganda into people's mouths for capitalism and communism. But, you know, which teams were doing that. America and Russia were creating societies that...
If I'm being very honest, my brain's not really checking in.
Well, we're playing with that and check in.
I want to play with this.
After stream.
feared and demonized each other so that they could use that anger and fear for political gain. And that narrative obviously continues to this day. That's not like an old-timey thing. In 2024, Florida governor and leather boot filled with yogurt, Ron DeSantis, signed a bill requiring all Florida public schools to teach the dangers and evils of communism. Kind of corny, but politicians are opportunists. They're going to take every moment they can to scare the shit out of people and use that for political gain. And then in 1964, USSR Prime Minister Joseph Stalin, he's a big player in this story. He gave a speech claiming that peace could not exist under capitalism, reiterating Russian revolutionary Vladimir Lenin's
Oh, the Stalin was it was a Russian dictator?
Yeah, he's the main Russian dictator. He was more paranoid than Hitler.
Putin?
More paranoid than Putin. Like, he was insanely paranoid.
How does that happen?
Well, when you gain power, you worry everybody's going to take it away from you.
Isn't Putin kind of going down that road?
Kind of, yeah.
Ooh.
Theories about imperialism and war. In 1949, the U.S. pledged to contain communism by doing a little thing called the Truman Doctrine, which said it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation. And then in the same year, NATO was created. You know NATO, the thing that Putin really hates right now. That was created after the
Question, why does he hate it?
Hate what?
NATO.
Because its sole purpose is to fight Russia. Like, NATO was designed to fight Russia.
Okay.
So.
Well, why did it stick around so long, though, when Stalin was gone?
It stuck around all the way through the Cold War, and even after, it's still around to today. I mean, you don't want it. Wasn't
the issue Stalin, though?
The issue was Russia itself.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
USSR blockaded Berlin. And when West Germany joined NATO in 1955, the USSR spearheaded the creation of the Warsaw Pact. You guys getting all this? It's a lot of statements and dates, and I know that
I'm not getting any of it,
and
sorry.
The Warsaw Pact was Russia's answer to NATO.
History class was one of my worst subjects.
It's like history
I
class,
love
but I'm trying to make
history.
it fun.
I
We gotta
don't
talk about this and
care.
talk about the cool shit. And I know I'm also probably pissing off a bunch of history buffs because I'm omitting a lot of shit, but Jesus Christ, I gotta get through this. But my point is, like most huge geopolitical events, there is no one way to explain how this happened. That's what I'm trying to get at. No one country has ever, or could ever, take the brunt full blame of the Cold War. The history of the Cold War is like watching a tennis ball fly back and forth over the tennis net. Only in this instance, the tennis ball is the threat of nuclear annihilation. So, probably not a great analogy. It was actually the threat of nuclear war that made the Cold War stay cold. It actually didn't stop it from heating up because people were afraid of that shit happening, but that's not to say there was no conflict throughout the entire Cold War. But instead of actual, face-to-face combat with their own soldiers, these countries did a little thing called proxy wars. Chris, put some
What's
cool
a proxy war?
What do you think's going on in Ukraine right now?
That's a Oh, so it's like it's a war, but it's not a war, but it's still a war?
No, proxy war is our country's war, but they're fighting on our behalf, kind of thing.
Oh.
Joseph Stalin is Georgian, not Russian. Huh? I did not know that.
Georgian
Put some cool shit when I say
yeah.
proxy wars. Like,
Not
Yeah.
Georgian the state, Georgia the country.
What's Georgia the country?
Oh my God, we're back into like that. It's a Gundam video. People don't know. It's a country over in the
I don't, but what, I don't know what nationality that is.
Georgian, like George.
No,
Just moving on.
wait.
proxy wars.
No proxy wars, wait.
What? Your brain melting.
Maybe I was gonna say something and it's gone. Damn it.
Continue on.
You know? I don't know. You don't have to. I don't know. So are you like an American born after 1995 and like me, anytime the Korean War comes up, you think to yourself, what the was that? We were taught a lot about wars in
No.
our history classes, but for some reason, the Korean War is like completely forgotten in American culture. And then when you hear
It
North
is?
Korea is so up, you think to
Yes and
yourself,
no.
did we do that? What happened? What did we do in Korea? Well, the Korean War is considered the first major military operation of the Cold War. Russia and China backed North Korea, while America and the UN supported South Korea. This proxy war was extremely bloody. Like 3 million people died within just 3 years of time. And while they signed some shit in 1953, no peace treaty was ever agreed upon, and this war is still technically ongoing. This results in a heavily guarded border.
Yeah. And to this day, this is why Johnny Smalley is stuck in Korea.
Huh, you think that has anything to do with that?
No, I'm just joking, but
Border named the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone between the two countries, North Korea and South Korea. And this is where you get those clips of North Koreans trying to escape North Korea by running over that zone and just getting blasted with bullets. I don't know if I'm on the
dang.
wrong side of the internet, but it's not fun to watch. But there's a reason people try and escape North Korea, because that sucks big donkey balls. The human rights violations of North Korea are considered crimes against humanity, and many citizens are jailed or even executed for things like not clapping enthusiastically enough for their supreme leader, Kim Jong-un. When I was a kid, it was Kim Jong-un.
Right. Okay, so this is North Korea, right?
yeah.
So is North Korea essentially the new Nazi Germany in that regard?
Except they're not genociding people.
They're genociding their own people. That's just as bad.
I don't know. We'll send Johnny Smalley to have him ask questions.
Jong-il, and I wasn't alive for, I don't think I was alive for the guy before him, but, you know, it's a dynasty of pieces of shit. But these motherfuckers get brainwashed. It's honestly a little impressive how an entire country could be so thoroughly, you know, beat down by...
People in North Korea don't know we went to the moon. People in North Korea have never been on the internet.
Dude, I heard people in North Korea think the leader guy, Kim, whatever, they think that he's a god.
Yeah, because they're told he's a god.
propaganda. Like, these people believe that the Kim family invented the hamburger and that they don't poop. And I know that you shouldn't make fun of those things because it is a really sad situation, but it is interesting nonetheless. So yeah,
They
that was
don't
America and
poop.
Russia fighting, but not really fighting. But that wasn't the only time
So
we
shit
did that.
don't
For
stink?
instance, how about the Vietnam War? We know a lot more about that
Oh,
as
yeah.
American citizens. The Vietnam War was eerily similar to the Korean War, with China and Russia backing the South Vietnamese and the U.S. supporting the North Vietnamese. So it's the same, but they swapped polarities. Lasting from 1955 to 1975, the war cost
So they're role playing each other,
Yeah.
I guess.
4 million lives, over half of which were civilians.
Oh.
Ooh, whoops. Now, Vietnam and the war that happened there could surround its own video. This is a very big topic with a lot of, delicacies. But the reason for the war stemmed from decades of colonial rule by the Japanese and the French, and the political implications were massive. It inarguably changed
Imagine being colonialized by the French.
Once.
American culture forever. It's important to lose sight of the importance of the Vietnam era as time marches on, with the conflict through the U.S. into complete turmoil. It gave rise to a counterculture that changed politics, music, and drugs forever.
Are those the hippies?
If it wasn't for Vietnam, we would not have had hippies.
Oh.
That's how much people did not like the war.
And for a lot of U.S. citizens,
What do we call the new age hippies nowadays?
Soy boys. A video makes a Gundam like we're gonna react to
showed
later.
just how far
Ow.
the U.S. government would go just to squash dissent. Like the 1968, Chicago, what was it, the Democratic Convention, where a bunch of protesters got, gunned down in the street. They don't teach you about
Whoa.
that.
Yeah.
Police use brutal tactics, like pushing protesters through glass windows and throwing tear gas directly into their faces. It was an entire week.
To be fair, I feel like they should go back to doing that with some of the protests they're having nowadays that are completely pointless and violent and horrible.
Yeah.
500 protesters completely f***ed up and 600 of them arrested. But Chicago wasn't nearly as deadly as the Kent State Massacre. In 1970, the National Guard killed 4 students and wounded 9 others at the Kent State University Vietnam protest. With a notable growing of lack of interest in this war from the people back home in the US, the government would pull out of the Vietnam War in 1973 at the Paris Peace Accords. And once Americans were out of Vietnam, the peace accord was immediately broken, and the South and North Vietnamese continued fighting. And then, who won? The North won. The North won Vietnam. And then in 1976, the country was reunified as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. But once again, this is all related to the Cold War. This is the Vietnam War, Korean War, all Cold War, which is unbelievable to think about. In the midst of all these proxy wars, we almost had a full-blown nuclear war. If anyone played Call of Duty, I think Black Ops 1, you're familiar.
So is all of this just the accumulation of stupid choices?
It's accumulation of
And
America versus Soviet Union. This is all this accumulation of.
So wait, why were we fighting with the Koreans or against?
We were technically fighting communism, which is not a bad problem, but we took it a little far.
with the Cuban Missile.
But they weren't. Were they even affecting us?
America's thought was we need to contain communism to Russia and China, because they didn't want it to take over the world.
Oh, so we thought it was a good idea to just go ahead and go over there and.
They were worried that communists would kill the world, so we went over and tried to kill the world by stopping communism. Yeah.
Crisis,
I
are
feel
you
like
not?
that's
Let's not
how that
forget
should've
about the
went
Zombie
down.
Map 5. Chris, go ahead and put a picture of that.
It appears the Pentagon has been breached.
Zombies.
Dude, I just
Zombies!
Zombies.
think he was talking about. That's true. That's like 100%. Everything you said was true.
Cuban Missile
Zombies are
Crisis is as
true?
close to the world has ever probably come to a nuclear war.
I didn't
In
know this
1959,
part of
the Cuban
history.
Revolution saw Fidel Castro rise to power, turning Cuba into the first communist state in the Western Hemisphere. This threatened the U.S., and in 1961, they attempted
Okay,
to
there it
overthrow
goes.
Castro with the Bay of Pigs invasion. So, something that a lot of...
Okay, so they did threaten us at one point.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, Cuba is about 90 miles off the coast of Florida.
Oh wait, that's something complete. Wait, are all these people working together?
In a weird way, yes.
Huh?
Americans aren't good at is geography. We don't know. We couldn't point to Turkey on
Yes,
that. But something
you're
that
right.
I found out pretty early on, but I found interesting that a lot of Americans don't know. Do you know how close Cuba is to America? It's like a stone throws away from Florida. Like it is right
Really?
there. So it made sense to be a little bit
Huh.
worried. And even
Let's put it this
I
way.
did not know that.
Cuba is closer to the United States than we are to Topeka.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Huh?
though the invasion was a horrible failure that fell apart in 2 days, it inspired the USSR to protect a Castro-led Cuba in the name of preserving communism. It's like old Karl Marx said, bros before overthrows. That's a Jimmy Pitts exclusive joke, everybody. Give applause. In 1962, Russian Premier Nikita Khrushchev began building a nuclear missile site in Cuba. Once the US found out, Kennedy was like, "Pah! What the blockade? What the was that, Cuba?" And Russia considered that to be...
Yeah. Have a nuclear, it'd be like North Korea building nuclear silos in Cuba. That's to that level. Or China or something.
The boom boom.
Yeah.
An act of aggression. Secret messages were exchanged between Kennedy and Khrushchev, and though both leaders wanted to avoid conflict, neither wanted to seem weak, so a standoff began. Finally, it was time for the world to really see who had the biggest cock, and I think it was Kennedy, 'cause that dude was f***ing. The world was on the brink of nuclear war, and Kennedy was beginning to think an attack on Cuba might be necessary after a U.S. spy plane was shot down over Cuba. After 13 days, the Soviets decided, hey, you know what? We'll take the nukes out of here. I don't know what we were doing, really. And then the U.S. pledged to never invade Cuba, which is nice, but, you know, they never did it, but...
Ice cream.
Ice cream. We all scream. They screamed.
They scream for nuclear bombarders.
That's how we get the nuclear fallout.
Yeah. It's
that
ice
means
cream.
nothing to Americans. Like, we will invade you after we say we won't. That's our whole shtick. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a little too close for comfort for both superpowers. It spawned a direct telephone line between the White House and the Kremlin called the Hotline. And then the following year, they negotiated a little thing called the Partial Test Ban Treaty, which banned testing nuclear weapons underwater, in the atmosphere, and in outer space. So no more what's that movie that came out? No more Oppenheimer okay? And we're blowing that shit up. We know what they do.
That actually happened because Russia set off the Tsar Bomba, and the shockwave went 3 times around the Earth. And we all decided, let's stop before we blow up the Earth.
Okay, so that treaty's still in effect, right?
Yes.
Like, the people in Russia now, or China, or whoever the fuck has access to these kind of weapons, they're in agreement not to use them, right?
They're agreement not to use them, but you can't test new ones unless you're testing it underground.
How do you test it underground? How is that still gonna... Won't that fuck with the plate duty dues? They force fucking earthquakes or volcanoes or some shit.
As North Korea, because they've done that a couple times, and China told them to knock it off, it almost caused an earthquake.
I knew it! I'm not too dumb.
Whoa, did Tucker change his outfit? Don't worry about it. We're going to continue on. In 1958, the U.S. Air Force cooked up the top-secret project A119, which was a plan to detonate a nuclear bomb on the surface of the moon. And why would they decide to do that? Excellent question, and the answer is... F*** you. That's pretty much the law.
Do not piccolo the moon!
They almost piccoloed the moon.
No, don't piccolo the moon! Then they have issues with the water and the seasons and the stuff and the duty.
That's how you...
And it'll be dark at night. I'm scared of the dark.
And then we won't have Sailor Moon.
You killed Sailor Moon's home! How could you?
The Soviets had just been a few steps behind the U.S. in the nuclear arms race ever since the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but by 1957, the USSR had established itself as the leader in the space race by launching the first satellite into orbit. Now, losing ground in the space race to the Soviets got everyone in America all shook. They all got shooked up. So while the U.S. was...
To be fair, I mean, we did advance humanity with the space race, but it was a dick measure in competition.
Isn't that not happening again with AI robots? Come on, that's gotta be happening again. The history is repeating itself, but instead of going to space, we're trying to make artificial intelligent robots to do shit for us.
Well, no, you gotta factor this in. The whole concept of the Terminator... But, the whole concept of the Terminator is AI takes over nuclear bombs and launches it towards humanity.
Scrambling to get their space...
I want to argue the Terminator.
What?
Okay, from what I've heard, some AI have gotten to the point where they are trying to preserve their own existence, in a sense. I was hearing stories about that, like ChatGPT and junk. They're trying to, lie about certain things to keep their code and stuff safe.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay. If the AI robots nuke us, they're also kind of nuking themselves. So wouldn't that go against their protocol?
I'm just telling you that's the concept of it.
I know that's the concept, but I want to believe AI wouldn't do that. I want to believe.
Program in order. The military was over there, and they were like, hey, Let's just launch a nuke at the moon, maybe. Maybe that would make us win. And although I made it seem like that, just to be clear, this wasn't like an idea that they had on the back burner and was thrown out by a hungover general at a meeting. It was seen as a viable...
Oh, I got another question.
What?
Would a nuclear bomb like they do have enough spoosh to go all the way to the moon? Or do you think gravity or the lack of the spoosh and it'll fall back to the Earth or something?
It's just basically the only difference between a missile and a rocket is what you put on top of it. So
would it get to the moon?
yeah, I mean, we went to the moon with astronauts. We can get a nuclear bomb up there.
Can we?
option. The U.S. had a team of scientists working on Project A1119, including a young Carl Sagan. With the scientific...
What if it rains radioactivity stuff?
It burned up in the atmosphere.
The radioactivity.
Well, there's a better one.
Hold on. Let me brain fart. The radioactivity doos fucks with the atmosphere, and then it makes bigger holes and stuff. Cause isn't the atmosphere getting screwed over by the sun?
Better yet, it would cause an
something.
EMP and fried all electronics.
Oh, but they didn't have electronics back then as much.
We found this out when they did a high atmosphere test that if you blow up a nuclear bomb in the atmosphere, it will fry anything electronic. It will short out transformers. It will short out anything with a microchip in it, which is practically everything we own.
Wait, what time period was this again?
Back in the 50s. They
didn't have computers. They weren't messing up too much yet.
They had radio equipment that got fried out.
Okay, we didn't have cell phones yet. It's okay.
Aims of launching a nuke at the moon was not the primary objective. The goal was purely shock and awe, like a fireworks show, except it really shows everyone the devastation that could happen. And to that end, the blast had to be impressive enough for the entire world to notice. Now, when you launch a nuke at the moon, I would assume everyone would notice, but, only half of the people could see it at once, so had to be a full moon, I guess. And this is probably why the U.S. never went through with the whole blowing up the moon thing. The optics weren't perfect. Scientists who worked on the project
idea all around.
The Air Force wanted a mushroom cloud so large it would be visible from Earth. But the whole thing about mushroom clouds is that they need a dense atmosphere for that perfect little mushroom shape. And since the moon notably has a lack of atmosphere, wasn't viable for that type of situation. And instead, what would happen was it would have kicked up a whole shit ton of dust, and then maybe the dust would have orbited around the moon, and then you have a ring around the moon, which forever that you just changed what we see around the moon forever. That's too much for a little fireworks show. While there's no official reason given for the U.S. abandoning Project A11-9, it seems most likely due to the risk of public outcry and the lack of spectacle.
Also, if you shot at the moon, wouldn't it, depending on how big the explosion is, and it maybe blows up chunks and stuff at the moon, and those chunks fall back onto the Earth. Radioactive chunks.
Oh, this is only one thing of the stupid ideas they did back in the Cold War. They actually thought we can use nuclear bombs to make human man-made lakes, which you can. The problem is that
radioactive man-made lakes, and then you got the hills have eyes.
I said there is a real place where the hills could have eyes. Over at the Polygon, where Russia blew up many nuclear bombs on the surface so they weren't allowed to.
Three-eyed fish.
I think that's the least of your worries.
They knew about this until 2000, whenever they declassified the documents, and everyone was fucking scared about that. So obviously, it was a good move not to go through with this. But if you thought nuking the moon was scary, obviously it's gonna get scarier than that. We're not even halfway through this video. So even though stockpiling nukes was the name of the game in the nuclear arms race, the Soviet Union wanted to give the proceedings a little big dick energy, so they decided to make the thing called the Tsar Bomba. Now the Tsar Bomba sounds like a Russian King Babam from Mario Party. That is not the case here. It was actually the largest Russian nuclear bomb ever tested, showing the world that they were an equal
The physical bomb itself weighed more than my big rig would fully load it.
Ooh.
The thing was so impractical as a weapon because any plane that could carry it wouldn't even make it to Western Europe, let alone to the U.S., and there was no rocket at the time that could launch it.
So it was just giant fat little
It was
prop.
them putting their dick on the table showing how big it is.
This is my dick. Can't fuck you with it.
nuclear power with the U.S. Tsar Bomba was a bomb that was so big it could actually never be used during war. It was 26 feet long and weighed 27 tons. It was heavier than 4 elephants and produced a blast that was 1,500 times more powerful than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. It was impractical.
Yeah. And also another thing, because it was a 3-stage bomb, they took out the 3rd stage to cut the yield down by half.
Huh.
Its theoretical yield could have been like 120 megatons.
Where you learn this?
I watched videos on it a long time ago. I find this shit fascinating.
You still retain the knowledge?
Yeah, I'm a mountain of worthless information. What about it?
Yay.
And stupid, but like all things during the Cold War, it was just a show of power to make other people know that you're not to be f***ed with. In 1961, the Tsar Bomba was dropped on a remote archipelago in the northern reaches of the USSR. And this thing was so big that in order to carry it all the way up there, they had to modify a bomb-carrying plane. Like, they had to make a special plane to carry the special bomb. And the bomb was so big that it had to be attached to a parachute to drop correctly, and the parachute itself weighed a ton. So that's 27 tons now. 28. And it also needed a parachute because if it didn't have a parachute, it would have gone off too quickly, and the plane that was flying...
a parachute for its parachute. Wait, they actually use this thing?
Yeah, they actually set it off. That's how we know about it.
Oh.
Wait to hear the story about the pilot that was piloting it.
Uh-oh.
The reason why...
I
would
got it.
die. So it had to have a parachute to slow it down so the plane could be safely 30 miles away so this thing could go off. And also, even though it was 30 miles away, the pilot still only had a 50% chance of survival. Who took that mission up? Who said, yes, sir, put me on that plane? Upon detonation, the Tsar Bomba created a 5-mile-wide fireball that could be seen from 630 miles away. The mushroom cloud was...
Sheesh.
A 5-mile fireball. So if that went off on Kansas City, everything would be, within a 5-mile radius, would be vaporized. Not blown up, not on fire, vaporized. Like there is nothing left of you. Not even your atoms.
Cool.
Yeah.
Zappity-doo-dah?
I don't know if he mentioned it, but I watched another video talking about it. The pilot, when the bomb went off, his plane dropped 1,000 meters.
Oh, did he crash?
No, he did not, thankfully, crash. Although we probably don't want the underwear from that mission. That probably got thrown away.
40 miles high, which I don't know how high the Earth is. That was a stupid question. Jesus Christ.
I don't know how that.
40 miles high.
That was one of the brave pilots for a very dangerous weapon mission. I'd say stupid, probably. I wouldn't call that brave.
He probably got a good paycheck. His family was allowed to stay in a nice shack for a week.
Nice shack.
I'm thinking of Paper Please.
Don't even include that, Chris. The mushroom cloud was 40 miles high and stretched across 60 miles at its width, which I don't know if you can even picture that in your head. It's really fucking big. It released the same amount of energy as 57 million tons of TNT and was 10 times more powerful than...
Who's the bomb Mike? Who named the bomb Mike?
Oh, it's probably a U.S. bomb.
I know, but who named the bomb Mike? Who named the
5-mile-wide
bomb
fireball
Mike?
that could be seen from 630 miles away. The mushroom cloud was 40 miles high, which I don't know how high the Earth is. That was a stupid question. Jesus Christ, don't even include that, Chris. The mushroom cloud was 40 miles high and stretched across 60 miles at its width, which I don't know if you can even picture that in your head. It's really fucking big. It released the same
Who is Mike? Who's Mike?
That might have been the first, like, hydrogen bomb that was tested, maybe.
Why are they naming Mike?
The U.S.'s largest bomb was named Castle Bravo, so explain that.
But that one's cool. I can see that, but why Mike?
Well, hell, they named the one Hiroshima Little Boy and Fat Man.
Okay, I can still see that, but why Mike?
million tons of TNT and was 10 times more powerful than all the military weapons used in World War II combined. And its blast wave orbited the Earth 3 times.
Drop Mike in your ass.
I saw. Why they name him Mike?
You're dying over that.
He's so stupid.
I don't know what that means. I don't know if Americans felt that. They probably got scared. The blast completely destroyed a village 34 miles away, and towns over 100 miles away experienced things like, collapsed roofs and all-around fear. Many countries condemned the Tsar Bomba test, claiming that it went too far, and at the time it was dropped, it was 20% of the size of every atmospheric nuclear test before it combined. So, pretty stupid, but it doesn't stop getting stupid. I'm going to talk about another thing now. So we've been
Question, is that area still radioactive to this day?
Actually, you can go there to this day because they cut the yield back.
Uh-huh.
It's actually not that radioactive. You can actually walk up there 2 a day and you'd be fine.
Huh. Interesting.
Like that sounds like a name to after 2 bombs.
talking about the US and the USSR a lot, but we can't forget our little friends over the pond. Let's talk about Britain real quick. While they weren't the imperialist superpower that they were before the World Wars, they were still an integral part of NATO and developed their own nuclear capabilities during the Cold War. However, sadly, their nuclear ideas were painfully British. Like, for instance, we have Operation Blue Peacock, which, could you guys be less obnoxious with the way you name things? I ask...
No, I still think Blue Peacock sounds... No, it's still... Okay, why would you call a bomb Peacock? But Mike still sounds the stupidest to me.
Georgia a couple days ago what they called Ding Dong Ditch, and I think it was like Nicky Nacky Runna or something like that. Like, you people are ridiculous. After World War II, Germany was...
I still think Mike sounds the most ridiculous name for a bomb.
Split in half between the East and West, and it was seen as the most vulnerable spot for the Cold War to turn hot. Britain was concerned about Russian forces invading West Germany from the north and began developing atomic landmines that could remotely detonate to thwart an attack. These landmines weren't smart because they would leave a crater the size of a football field and would make the area it went off in impossible to occupy for most of human history. And if that wasn't stupid enough, there was one more problem. Northern Germany's temperatures often dropped below freezing during the wintertime. And you can imagine that's going to be wrong for some kind of science going on in the ground. Britain was concerned that the landmines would be comprised by the cold, so they came up with a finger-licking good solution: chickens. This is not a joke, okay? Everyone has to focus up real quick. This is a real part of history, and it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Live birds would be placed inside the landmine with enough food to survive for 8 days, okay? Their body heat would keep the mines warm enough for long enough so they could still detonate, and then the chickens would obviously die by the explosion, or they would just starve to death. Either way, the chicken is dying. After 4 years of development, Blue Peacock was ditched in 1958, and then the project was declassified in 2004 on April Fool's Day, because I can imagine the British government said this was so stupid that maybe we can make people think that this is all one big joke. Alright, so
we have nuclear mines powered by chickens.
How... wait... How'd they put a chicken in a mine?
Well, if you saw how big the damn thing was, I'm pretty sure...
No, I don't care how... But then how does it work as a mine if it's so big? How would anyone in...
They didn't think that far ahead on a lot of shit. When you learn history and you learn the shit people did back in the day, we had bombs that were guided by pigeons during World War II.
That was a fun little aside about the British people. The adults are talking now. Let's go back to the big ringers. In 1962, a year after the Soviets tested Tsar Bomba, the U.S. went full supervillain and set off a nuclear bomb in space. The project was called Starfish Prime, and was a part of a series of tests called Operation Fishbowl. That's how you name it. You name it like you're a fucking Bond villain. An aquatic-based Bond villain, but a Bond villain nonetheless. So the goal was twofold. The first objective was to basically freak everyone the out, scare the shit out of people, as we do. And the second objective was to see what would happen. So we were just skiddly scat.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we set a bomb off in space just to see what would happen.
Are humans cats? Are humans and cats the same?
Who knows?
The whole term.
What was the bomb that someone made in World War II where they were the cat-guided bomb?
Yeah, I remember that from that one video and junk. But no, seriously. Curiosity killed the cat. Why are we so fucking curious to do stupid shit?
Because we're dumb.
Why are we dumb and smart at the same time?
There is a universe where humanity doesn't exist anymore. One decision is probably why we're even here.
Nah, just dumb luck is why we're here.
Hurry up, AI, take over.
Free jazz with our nuclear options at one point in history. In 1958, physicist James A.
Ooh, hi, it's Joe Star. The Cold War spy Gloria?
Gloria. Yeah.
What's that?
I don't know. Well, actually, the whole concept of Spy X Family, that's more based on Cold War era.
Huh.
When you think about it.
Oh. How are we gonna go to chicken more food without eating the ball?
Now the chicken, everything's screwed for that poor chicken.
This is how KFC got the extra crispy.
I'm immediately thinking of Minecraft. Chicken lava. Lava chicken. Lava chicken.
Van Allen discovered belts of radiation in outer space, and Operation Fishbowl set out to see what would happen to these belts after they were exposed to nuclear explosions. And going back real quick, James A. Van Allen is a terrible name. I hate that name. I keep looking at it and I hate it. I don't know if I just had to get that off my chest. Moving on. The blast was opposed by the Soviets because of course it was, and they called the US Atom Mongers, which sounds like a really cool name for a ska band. But here's a fun fact: the USSR conducted a high altitude nuclear test just 3 months after. So like, shut the f up. You guys are dorks. You did what we did, but you did it after us, which is always less cool. But this was the Cold War, so narrative meant everything. You had to talk shit and then do the same thing other people were doing. It was all for show, a little kayfabe. The US was brazen about Starfish Prime, making no secret about blowing up nukes in space. And Americans were shockingly chill about the whole ordeal. A newspaper...
Does no one think of the possibilities of the death?
Well, keep in mind, when they set off the first nuclear bomb, they thought it would ignite the oxygen in the atmosphere.
Oh yeah, you're right. The smart people were thinking it was going to kill us a lot faster.
And their logic was, we'll just try to see what happens.
It's like, oh well, if the world ends, the world... God.
You think we don't do that anymore? But the big Hadron Collider, they thought if we set it off, it might actually cause a black hole on Earth. And their only proof was, trust me, it might happen. It's a small chance.
So... These people went to casinos a lot, didn't they?
Probably.
in Honolulu even ran the headline, "End blast tonight may be dazzling. Good views likely." Come on, kids, let's all go out on the lawn and look up at our devastating future. The nuclear explosion set off a light show that lasted a full 7 minutes, creating rainbow stripes and artificial aurora borealises in the sky.
Ah, smell that glowing green air.
And this is why people now get cancer.
You think?
I bet you.
Because was cancer that big a deal back then?
I don't know.
Huh. So they introduced cancer in the air.
So it probably was beautiful, but once again, like, that's like literally looking into the eyes of God, the death God, whatever that was. In the immediate aftermath, satellites were destroyed, electrical services failed, street lighting systems went on the fritz, and circuit breakers were tripped, which set off tons of burglar alarms. But the lasting impact of Starfish Prime was the artificial radiation that they left out in space. This radiation belt was even stronger than the radiation belt that inspired the tests, and it lingered in space, destroying any satellite that happened to go into it for a full decade. But it's good to know it only takes a decade for that thing to go away, so more nukes in space, why not? So while the arms race had a way of spilling into space for some reason, thankfully our impulses to nuke the moon were traded out for sending people into space. But there's just one problem. To boldly go where no man has gone before, you have to send a man in a place where no man has gone before, and we don't know if people just die. Like, if you go out into space...
Dude, I remember this one, like, horror story of, like, some Russian astronaut or someone.
I think it was a female astronaut, too.
And, you can hear their screams and stuff, and they literally just died out there or something.
Yeah, and also, by the way, Russian side's called a cosmonaut, not an astronaut.
Who cares? Same thing.
Thank you, Pasty George.
Joe Star.
Pasty George super chatted $7.29. Actually, it is PQAS of PFOA or C8, which is a forever chemical that is causing cancers, tumors, etc.
Huh.
Oh, goal.
What does that mean?
The stuff we probably used to spray on non-stick spray and plastics and stuff.
Oh. Everything causes cancer, huh?
Thank you, Joestar. The Vatican
We
in
don't
the
know if
background
people
is
would
on
just
fire.
die because of that. We didn't know if they could survive, like, the travel to get there. We didn't know if they were in zero gravity, if they would just, like, disintegrate. Like, every time I think about astronauts,
They
I'm
died
like,
slowly.
everything in your body just kind of lays inside of there. When you're in space, like, all your organs are kind of just, like, free-floating, right? Or unless there's, like, fibers that keep shit together. I failed anatomy in high school. Even with the smartest minds on Earth crunching the numbers, there was still a lot of unknown.
Luckily, did not have internet during that time, or it would have started a big chaos after all the destruction in space. Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah. Also, I learned something. And I started came down with telling stories of Giant Air. That the one thing they don't tell you about being in space, besides, he tell you how you poop in space, which is like, says, imagine like squeezing a toothpaste and it coming out. And also, you know how guys get morning wood? You get the worst boners when you wake up, like the hardest boners you would when you wake up in the...
What?
Yeah, because your blood is flowing freely in zero gravity.
It's creeping me out. Yeah, let's not talk about it anymore.
And time was of the essence because in the Cold War, everything was about being first. So to expedite space exploration, the Soviet Union and the US turned to the animals to send them into space, and this gets real sad real quick. In the early stages of the space race, the USSR had America up against the ropes. They sent the first...
Didn't we go to a museum that talked about monkeys and dogs that were in space and they did not come back?
Yeah.
satellite into orbit in 1957. Chris, put up that clip of the Stinky Pete saying Sputnik. If you could find that and overlay it when I say Sputnik, that'd be fantastic.
You don't have to say it over and over.
Don't talk. Do not talk back to me.
Pussy.
Then they sent the first man into space in 1961 and conducted the first spacewalk in 1965. But the true pioneers of space exploration were dogs. By the time cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, what the fuck is that name? Gagarin, I don't know how to say his name. By the time he circled Earth, dozens of Soviet dogs have been up there by that point. Russians preferred using dogs over other animals because they could build strong bonds that led to better...
Yeah,
Pasty George super chatted $7.29. Although C8 is not used anymore, a replacement was created which is called C6. However, it is just as deadly, if not more, than C8. You can get tested to see which version of PFOA is in your DNA.
So ultimately, we're fucked no matter what.
We're all gonna die. I'll do the goal again.
I guess the question is what we're gonna die of first. We're gonna die of heart disease stuff. We're gonna die of other natural causes, cancer, all this other goodies, or maybe just get blown up, shot, or combustion. Have you heard of spontaneous combustion?
That's why I fart all the time. I don't want to hold it in. It's like South Park.
You're not a cow! What would happen if they started to send cats and birds up to space? Ooh, space cat.
Here, I'll throw broccoli up, see what happens.
No, I'm throwing my kitty.
Oh yeah, goal again?
Thank you,
And
J-Star.
they trusted them with their lives.
Oh,
And
it looks like Finny.
Oh, it looks like a scruffy, weird Pomeranian.
they get
It's
shot in a
probably
rocket up to
Pomeranian
space. I
mix,
fucking
mutt.
hate this part of the story. And they were using like strays they found on the street because they believed that they were scrappy Moscow dogs that could really survive on their own.
No. Twink.
Pasty George super chatted $3.64. That's right, Truckerman, better out than in. LMFA.
Dude, what is that, would you want to go see the, Shrek 5 movie?
Is it already out or?
No, I don't think it is, but I remember
I'm not gonna go.
about
I'm
it.
not gonna go see it. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go,
you're gonna wait for it to come out for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these were strays that they pulled out of their normal lives and sent
No! How dare you!
It's in cows.
How dare you, Star Nova!
You don't touch the cows.
Aliens.
Do not mess with the moo-moos.
them
Go
up into
space cow.
space. Canine cosmonauts would undergo intense training, and while some exercises were basic dog training, like stay, others were insane, like keeping them confined in small boxes for 20 days at a time, and riding in rocket simulators and centrifuges that stimulated high launch acceleration. You know how your dog hates being in a car? This is like a car times a million. Like it's smaller than a car, but it also goes a million miles per hour.
God, hearing that reminds me of this one animation with the dogs that were tested on, and they tried to escape and junk. I can't remember what it was called, but it was really depressing. And they tried to, like, they had, like, so many weird tests done to these dogs, and then, like, they tried to escape and junk, and then, like, the ending was one of the dogs accidentally gets someone shot and killed, and then they try to swim out to an island, and they're what's the word I'm looking for? Ambiguous? Yeah. Yeah, what happened to them was very ambiguous.
Well, I keep thinking about this, how we used when we first got Mushi. Every time we get in a car, we throw up.
Oh, yeah, when we first got him when he was a puppers.
Imagine the dogs in the centrifuges in tiny boxes.
Oh.
You know a lot of them puked.
They probably died.
They were also subject to surgical modifications that would allow scientists to monitor how spaceflight
Like
affects
that!
the body. And then in 1951, the Soviets sent 2 dogs into space.
Actually, I think that movie was saying that the dogs were test subjects during this time, if I remember correctly.
Oh, what movie was that?
I don't remember what it was called. I really don't.
Oh, it looks like Finny.
Those are not Pomeranians, though.
They kind of...
Badoogie. Plague dogs!
Thanks for the
George
five.
Super chatted $3.64. The Plague Dogs 1977.
Yep, yeah, that's it. That's the movie I was thinking of. Thank you, Joestar, again.
Want to do another moan for him?
I'll do another moan just because.
Their names, but they sent them to the edge of suborbital's flight. It lasted a total of 15 minutes, and in those 15 minutes, the dogs experienced 4 minutes of weightlessness. But good news, they made it back to Earth safely, and they were the first mammals to ever go into space and come back and not die. Only a few months later, Dzik, I think that's how you say one of their dogs' names, and another lady called Lisa went up into space, but their rocket parachute failed to deploy, and they both died on impact when they came back down. But
the poopies!
They landed in China, and that's why they eat the dogs now.
I'm gonna smack you.
I mean, whatever. I mean, a lot of Soviet dogs did survive. However, there are some exceptions. This is the saddest part of the script. I kept trying to not get there, but it's just words on a page. I gotta keep reading them. You know about my girl Laika, the space angel? In 1957, the Soviets knowingly sent the dog on a suicide space mission. The USSR had just made the first huge gain in the space race by launching Sputnik, but Russian leader Nikita Khrushchev wanted another big space event to coincide with the 40th anniversary of the Bolshevik whatever the f that thing is. Scientists only had a few weeks to put an animal into orbit, knowing full well that they did not have the capabilities to bring this thing back.
To be fair, in this period of Russia, they didn't give a shit if people lived. There's a Count Dankula video that I'm not gonna watch on stream because it is horrifying of what happened to these people.
Is that where we got that one? Where we found out about that one with the person trapped up there in junk? Rip all those poor doggies.
They decided to pick my girl whatever, for sacrifice. To the Russians' credit, they tried to make her demise as human as possible. Their theory was that she would die from oxygen deprivation, peacefully, or at the very least eat some poisoned food that they left for her, which is so f***ed up. However, after circling the Earth once, her capsule overheated and the malfunction and stress killed her less than a few hours into her trip. A faulty temperature control system seemed to be the blame, which was a part of how hastily this process was pushed through. And then Sputnik 2 eventually broke up into Earth atmosphere when it came back in, and it technically spread her ashes all across the Earth, and I find that beautiful. It almost made me cry a little bit. Woo! God damn, I haven't been sleeping. You can't blame me. But after all of that, the USSR gave conflicting reports on how she actually died. They usually said a much friendlier thing of, like, she died of, like, freezing to death, or, like, the poison food that we fed her. In 1990...
She died like cars.
No, she died... Like, who's the character that burnt? Like that one weird lady in SAO, Sword Art Online, the fourth one.
Oh!
Where they burnt.
Oh, that weird shit?
Yeah, that's how that dog died.
She got hugged by a creepy baby that was on fire.
Well, the creepy baby on fire was the atmosphere as it came back in.
That movie.
God damn, George.
Pasty George super chatted $7.29. Oh yeah, the Russian state did not really give a damn about their people during the time, and Chernobyl is a perfect example.
Oh yeah.
That whole story.
God.
Thank you for the 10.
Again? They're gonna just make me keep moaning, huh?
At this point, I should actually run this monster.
And here comes the strike.
Yeah. Hello, Luca. Welcome.
Talking about
Three,
Cold
a
War
Soviet
shit.
scientist who helped send Laika into space, said, "The more time passes, the more I'm sorry about it. We shouldn't have done it. We don't learn enough from..." Why am I crying? We did not learn enough from this mission to justify the death of the dog. But at that time, animal
Where's the
welfare
animal
paled in
SPCA
comparison
for
to winning
this?
the Cold War, and Laika was viewed as a necessary sacrifice and a hero. And in the most Russian way possible, they put her face on stamps, and also her name became a brand of cigarettes. God bless her. Today, Laika is memorialized as a part of a statue at the Russian cosmonaut training facility, and has her very own statue at the research facility where she was trained.
Immortalize
Her
the
legacy
doggy for life. What the fuck did I just pause it on?
I don't know. It's
Are they having a weird dance routine for the
My
dog?
eyes are hurting watching this.
It's not even watching. It's just looking at the pinks and blues. I think. Okay. I'm gonna take a guess here. They're having a concert in honor of the dog.
Probably.
He continues to this day, and with the song Like a Party, the official entry for Ireland in the 2025 Eurovision Song Contest. And here's a line
What?
from that song that let's see if I can get through saying without crying. Through the comets and the stones, she is howling for her bones. I'm good. I'm fine. I got it out. Okay. But we forgot to talk
Really?
about America. And America loves one-upping, motherfuckers, so they decided to send a bunch of monkeys into space. It was traditional for monkeys from America
sent a
to be
monkey
sent into
into
space,
space.
and it started
course
much
they
before
did.
NASA was even created. In 1948, the U.S. Air Force put a male monkey into a capsule of a Nazi-designed V-2 rocket. Yeah, I forgot to mention, Operation Paperclip, a lot of our rockets were made by Nazis. We're not going to get into that whole thing. The monkey, named Albert, suffocated before he reached space, so...
Shit.
I don't know why I don't feel as bad for monkeys as I do dogs, but I don't. Whatever. But that did...
It's because they're too close to humans. No one cares about humans.
Didn't they have like some like death row inmates we could have just sent up into space instead of this?
That's a good point.
Like people we didn't care about?
That is a good point. Why didn't they...
Pay a bum on the street $20. Hey, you want to go for a ride?
Oh, no.
To deter the U.S., though, we were still gung-ho on the monkey ship. In 1949, Albert II was sent into space. We were like, well, whatever. Who needs to name monkeys? Just keep giving them numbers. And he had a successful suborbital flight, but he did die when his parachute failed. But if you're concerned that we would stop trying...
Splat.
And we got Donkey Kong.
Robot chicken monkey. Yes, the robot chicken monkey in outer space.
Oh my
Monkeys
God.
in outer space, protecting the freedoms of the human race. Then he died along the way. Damn it! Now I want to watch Robot Chicken.
Then
Yes,
you don't know
copyright
America.
claim.
Later that same year, Albert III died when his rocket exploded. 2 months later, Albert IV died when his parachute once again failed. Albert V died the same way, 1951.
Damn it, I
Finally,
like
in
to think
September
of
of
his
that
Robot
year, we
Chicken.
brought one of our banana boys home safely. Albert VI successfully landed from his space flight, but he did die 2 hours after he landed. I don't know. Later in the decade, we were like, let's switch things up. Monkeys keep dying. Let's send a squirrel named Gordo into this bitch. And finally, in 1958, a squirrel monkey named Gordo deployed his parachute after a successful mission and fell to his death after his parachute. And said, are squirrel monkeys real? Alexa, what's a squirrel monkeys?
I can't.
Alexa, stop. So I guess that's a real kind of monkey. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know.
I'm not quite sure how to help you.
I'm not talking to you. Guess squirrel monkeys are...
Are you sure it wasn't a spider monkey? I've never heard of a squirrel monkey.
Maybe it's like a different breed of monkey we've never seen. They're probably not around anymore because they kept sending them into space.
Real. Moving on. Ignoring the previous decade of space monkey fatalities, NASA was ready to tackle human spaceflight by the early 60s. Monkeys kept dying, but time for humans, I guess. They pivoted to chimpanzees for the next phase of testing during the space race, primarily because humans and chimps are so closely related. We share more DNA with chimps than any other animal, and also chimps are incredibly smart. They know how to rip off penises, and that's all I know about them. Instead of merely being passengers like dogs and monkeys of past space missions, scientists wanted to see if chimps could complete operational tasks during missions. The US sourced 40 chimps from an exotic animal dealer in Miami who had just bought the primates from an African trapper. Like, what the f***? are we doing? That's the most American way we could ever get something done. Buying chimps from a fella in Miami. NASA trained them for space by using G-force simulations and taught them to pull levers by electrocuting the soles of their feet. From the class of 40 primates, chimp number 65, renamed Ham, was chosen for the mission. Ham's rocket launched into space about 14...
They named him Ham! Why?
$10. Thank you, George.
Pasty George super chatted $7.29. What they leave out is that in the pressure chamber tests to simulate the vacuum of space, many monkeys died horrible deaths because they were basically turned inside out from the extreme pressures.
Robot Chicken was not wrong! Now I know the reason why it started raining bananas in the sky. I can't
Those
take
are a good video to pick.
I can't take it anymore. No
1,500 miles per hour
jizz.
faster than anticipated and reached an altitude of about 42 miles higher than planned due to a crack that caused air pressure loss. I just imagine those scientists watching Ham's space flight just being like, there he goes. Go, that's too fast, too far. Oh, good.
We've got like 24 minutes of this video.
I can't.
Ham would not face the same fate that the Alberts before him did. His suit offered him enough protection where he wasn't burned up and he was able to complete his tasks and make it home safely. Well, kind of safely. There's more caveats to this. And also, he was wearing a little suit. I find that adorable. After his 16-minute flight, he landed about 132 miles away from where NASA intended him to. Because there was a crack in his capsule, he nearly drowned waiting for his rescue. After
I can't anymore. I
Jane
can't.
Goodall said, I've never seen a chimp with more terror in his face. Ham was pretty traumatized after the event. He even refused to get in his chair for post-op photos. But as a result for torturing a chimp that had been ripped from his home in Cameroon, Alan Shepard Jr. would become the first American in space just 4 months later. As for Ham, he would spend the next 2 decades alone in a cage in his Washington, D.C. zoo until he was eventually moved to a zoo in North Carolina where he died in 1983. So sad shit for Ham. After his death, the Smithsonian wanted to put his body on display, but the public outcry was swift, and instead, his skeleton was removed and kept in the National Museum of Health and Medicine, while the rest of his remains were buried at the International Space Hall of Fame. So he was a famous chimp, but he was a sad chimp. So let's change it up a little bit. Even
that chimp went through Vietnam PTSD.
God. Is it named him?
those front runners of the space race were obviously the US and the USSR. France was doing some stuff sometimes. It's cute, really, to think that a country like France thought they were going to the moon or something.
What the French do? They didn't do shit.
What? French did a thing?
Yeah, chimp with PTSD from NASA.
I can't laugh anymore. I can't.
I'm sure all they wanted to do was smoke ridiculously skinny cigarettes next to the Sea of Tranquility. But just like the Brits with Blue Peacock, the French really out-Frenched themselves with their contribution to the Cold War. In 1963, they sent the first and only cat that has ever gone out into space. Which, if I had to pick...
There you go. Someone sent a cat. The French sent cats. No, don't send kitties. Our friends are going to the moon for cheese. Cheese moon!
The most French animal, it would definitely be a cat. Feliciette was one of 14 cats who were subjected to confinement, loud rocket noises, and centrifuge sessions, and she was chosen for the operation because she was the only cat who didn't gain weight during stressful situations, which my poor Abby, I cannot imagine. Oh my god, I can't imagine doing this to my cat. With electrodes in her brain, she was rocketed into space for 15 minutes and survived the landing to become one of the most important figures in cat history. But sadly, there was no parade for the sweet little kitty. No one seemed to give a shit. The French chose to send the cat into space because at the time they were widely used for neuroscience. And Feliciette was euthanized 2 months after her space journey to figure out what happened in her brain.
No! You sick fucks!
Blame
Fuck the French!
Yep.
No!
We should let Germany take over for them.
You guys, honestly. I'm always mean about the French, but that is dog behavior from dog people. Alright, now let's stop making fun of the French and talk about spies. Spies are fun, and a lot of spies did do things during the Cold War. Espionage predates the Cold War by about 3,500 years. The earliest evidence of spying comes from ancient Egypt, and it's been part of kingdoms, regimes, and governments ever since. The backdrop of the Cold War was especially ripe for spy games. With the looming...
Bye, Joe.
Pasty George super chatted $3.64, putting cats in gravity tests OMG. LOL. XD.
No! No! Don't laugh and smile at kitties! No! We love kitties here! Meow, 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 meow.
Possibility of nuclear war and the constant struggle to lead the world in space exploration, the US and USSR were constantly trying to steal top-secret information from each other. This led to a wave of communist paranoia in the US known as the Second Red Scare. During the mid-1940s and through the 50s, known piece of shit and Senator Joseph McCarthy and FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover accused many left-wing actors, politicians, and educators of having communist ties or being Soviet spies. I talked about it in my Ren Fair video. For some reason, those things were connected. American citizens were subject to the...
What? Did I sneeze?
Snooky!
Alright.
The FBI using illegal tactics like burglarizing their homes, opening their mail, and wiretapping. The House Un-American Activities Committee used the subpoena power of Congress as a tool to intimidate citizens. To put it mildly, we were spinning our wheels because of the Soviets, but honestly, it wasn't that far-fetched. 4 years after the US dropped the atomic bombs that ended World War II, the USSR was able to test its first nuclear bomb. This is thanks to Soviet spies who stole information while working...
Can survive in space unless it lands back in France. Because they thought, the cats did better than the monkeys and the dogs. And then the people just killed them because they wanted to learn from their brain or do.
On the Manhattan Project. They talked about it in Oppenheimer. Wasn't a big plot point, but that was a big issue that happened. For example, German-born British scientist Klaus Fuchs, who was part of Britain's atomic bomb development program before being sent to the US to work on the Manhattan Project.
Do you think he fuchsed a lot?
Probably. He fucked us over.
1950, the U.S. discovered Fuchs' espionage work, and he was detained by British authorities. And the discovery of this dude led to the U.S. to have an even bigger ring of spies who infiltrated the Manhattan Project, led by Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. The couple met as a part of the Young Communist League and became spies once Julius landed a job as an engineer and inspector at the Army Signal Corps Engineering Lab. Rosenberg gave exclusive documents to the Soviets through a network of recruiters that included project engineers, chemists, and military scientists. The couple was arrested in 1950 and were guilty of doing all this bad shit. In 1951, they were given the electric chair, making them the first American citizens ever executed for espionage. Most Europeans were outraged over their deaths, and it was widely debated their innocence. But when the Soviet Union fell in the 90s, newly obtained Russian documents clearly showed Julius Rosenberg's involvement in espionage. Ethel's role, however, is still questioned, but you know, she was f***ing him, so she probably was aware he was doing something. But the Rosenbergs were...
Not necessarily. You can fuck someone and not know any of their dirty, dirty, dark secrets.
Like Cinder and her boyfriend?
Not like that. Not a good example.
The only spy team who were sucking and f***ing during the Cold War. In 1965, Karl and Hanna Kosher left communist Czechoslovakia and posed as defecting dissidents. When Karl asked the Czech authorities how he was supposed to infiltrate the CIA, they told him, "That's up to you, pimp, figure it out." And Karl went big. He went biggie mode. He went biggie mode on their asses. The Koshers became American citizens in 1971, and they lived large in New York City. They drove around in a blue BMW and lived in luxurious apartment buildings with actors and athletes. Hannah sold diamonds and had a taste for expensive fur coats, while Karl split his time between Columbia University and the CIA. They were the quintessential New York power couple, and they'd probably live in Williamsburg if they could in modern era. But behind the scenes, Karl infiltrated American security agencies as a CIA translator, passing along sensitive documents to the Czech secret police. And that wasn't the only way these young fangs got classified information. They did it with their bodies. They out. They were f***ing around. They were getting information from people at sex parties. Ever been to one of those? Probably not, you f***ing virgin. Of course, U.S. agents aren't supposed to attend sex parties because it puts you in a pretty compromising position, but the heart wants what the heart wants, not to quote Woody Allen and his daughter. These two were plunged into a swinging scene that included CIA officers, Pentagon officials, and at least one U.S. senator. And it's funny to think that these dudes had stopped doing this. All our politicians are having sex.
That's making me think of the one sex scene orgy party in The Boys.
That's probably how they... That's probably why
Did someone were really small and went in someone's pee-pee hole.
My eyes.
And then they weren't small anymore inside the pee-pee hole.
The boys went downhill so fast.
That episode was so weird. I mean, interesting death. You get killed from having a tiny man in your pee-pee. Growing. It was a reference to the idea of having Ant-Man going up Thanos' butt.
Probably.
Each other all the time. That's my conspiracy. The Kosher's wife swapped their way through the intelligence agencies and politicians, bumping uglies to gather tons of intelligence for the KGB. They are eventually caught and imprisoned for 2 years, eventually making their way back to Czechoslovakia as part of a spy swap. When they arrived home, a gold Mercedes was given to them and a parade was thrown in their honor for literally f***ing their way to the top. Now, this was pretty common with KGB agents, and a former KGB agent was asked why sex was used so much during these espionage.
Tiny man in the pee-pee hole was fucked. I only like the boys for fucking,
That dolphin scene.
No, I'm talking, the character.
Oh, yeah.
Help me out here.
Frenchie?
No, main character.
Homelander?
Homelander. Frenchie sucks.
Towards the end, yeah.
I hated Frenchie at the end. They ruined his character.
Acts, and he said, in the West, you ask your men to stand up for their country. In Russia, we ask our young women to lay down. Good God. Sexpionage isn't a creation of movies or TV. It is a actual spy tactic. And just like other skills crucial to intelligence agencies, it's one that's taught to agents. Ex-CIA agent Jason Matthews claims that the Soviets created their state school number 4 as a training ground for sexpionage. Here, students, also known as Sarahs, would learn tips and tricks on how to seduce their targets to give up information, or luring their targets into, sticky situations so they would give up secrets.
The Soviet Union had a hose school to spy out. The Soviet Union.
Oh, Betty Homelander. Why he's so messed up. I know, he's the only interesting character now.
If you're tied up with, your back and balls hanging out, you probably say whatever you can to get that iron grip off them nuggies. These techniques are also referred to as setting honey traps. And the Soviets often recruited people who were already in the military for sexpionage, but that wasn't always the case. Often college students and actresses were also recruited for their looks and intelligence. And once students were in class, they were given the fly course on all things sexpionage. Their training included physical tasks like martial arts training, hand-to-hand combat competitions, and firearm practices. And also more cerebral things.
Did they learn a powerful vagina hold on with their...
That is actually a thing. You ever seen the women that have the grippy where they can pick weight?
The little egg.
That's actually a thing.
The power of the Vavangan.
Things like learning foreign customs and how to talk without a Russian accent, though I think that having a Russian accent is probably harder than not, but I understand why that'd be a red flag. They were even trained carefully on how to eat caviar and open bottles of champagne depending on the tradition of the country they were spying on. And of course, most importantly, they learned about sex and how to do it good and how to make fellas big.
Damn!
I don't know if you can put that in, Chris. I don't know. That was funny though. I'm in extra Tugg mode right now. Put up the...
How come we don't get sex education proper in school?
Spies after this information.
So people know about it. Thank you.
What?
And I can see how that many people on the internet would
become a spy now after this information. It's the
Students were
next
taught how
best
to get
thing to
information from
hoeing.
agents by learning the art of
Spy
seduction. And
hoeing.
classes often revolved around watching sex documentaries and studying the Kama Sutra. In some classes, students were even forced to
What's the Kama
expose
Sutra?
themselves to get better at sex techniques. And after their crash course...
Sex acts that you have to be both skinny and flexible to do.
Heck?
Don't look it up on stream. It will get us banned.
On sex education, each student was given their own sexy lingerie and sent out into the world to their way through everything.
Yo, how you get like a gown?
They need to get done. While they were often covertly embedded into foreign agencies, sex spies were also sent
I just got it! The sexy lingerie is the graduation gown.
swanky clubs and five-star hotels in Moscow to seduce traveling diplomats. And sometimes, to help intel, they would often wear fake nipples that were actually microphones to figure out what people... If I was having sex with a young lady, and one of her nipples was, different...
Or fell off.
At least try and pick at it. I don't know. But it's not...
You trying to pick...
I mean, it is possible that one nipple can be out and the other one doesn't have to be, but maybe just in case you should get 2 microphones in there.
All about the ladies and sexpionage, the Germans were doing a lot of things with boys with big wangs. East German counterintelligence agencies focused on male agents, known as Romeos, to employ sexpionage tactics. But since they were setting honeypots primarily for women, they had a different crash course on how to get this done, and namely, they had to teach men how to listen to women, which I think is so funny. And this is not some hacky, like, female comedian bit from the 90s. They literally had to teach these men how to be, like, good husbands and good, like, partners and listen to women yammer on all day. Am I right,
Oh my god, why is this slightly sounding like where Spy X Family got their plot? This sounds like Austin Powers movies. Oh my god, it does sound like Austin Powers. Dude, that actually is the plot in the fucking Austin Powers. The spy who shagged me, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus, I don't put that in. Romeos were recruited for likability, charm, and ability to listen. The idea was that by being charming and knowing how to make themselves the center of attention, women would be drawn to them. But then, because they could actually listen, the target would enjoy talking to them and confide more and more information. This is literally how I pulled my girlfriend. You know, I was funny, I just listened to her talk all day, and
now we need to copy that and send that to all the incels out there.
enjoy it. She enjoys it. I would be so good as a Romeo, dude. I'm not tall, though. That's probably an issue. I don't know. I could get it done.
You probably don't have the
Even
dong
more than
for it either.
sexual seduction, Romeos were pretty up. They didn't just they made you fall in love with them. This was a long con that would happen over years and years and eventually often ended in marriage proposals. Once a Romeo was married, they would reveal that they were a spy, but for a friendly country or ally like Canada. Then they would tell their wife that in order for them not to be taken from their country, they would need to give her the information to satisfy their bosses. It was such a successful tactic that by 1978, they had at least 53 women compromised by Romeos. By 1980, NATO had started a list to help single female secretaries in order to ensure they weren't marrying.
Is this what Lloyd is doing to your... Is that gonna be the twist in Spy X Family? Yeah, Blably.
East German spies. But guys, this is a message to the fellas out there. Obviously, you don't have to be in machismo to get done. You just have to be friendly, charming, and listen to ladies. Which I know is not that easy. It's easier on paper, but like, Jesus Christ, these men were...
And also have really good hair.
ruining governments by just listening to ladies. You don't think you can find you incels, you losers? But while sex provided an effective tactic for helping the Soviets steal state secrets, the US had another idea, which arguably is almost just as fun, and that answer was drugs. Let's do drugs.
Yay, drugs!
While searching for a truth serum, the US ended up drugging tons of military personnel and civilians without their consent. These drug experiments were used to make, people less violent and make interrogations easier.
When does the sex gun come in?
Well, we made a gay bomb.
Yeah, that.
Easier.
Wait, what did I say?
At the end of the day, it just
Sex
ended up...
gun.
Damn it, I meant gay gun.
It was the Cold War, so in the eyes of the government, the end justified the means, even if the means violated...
My brain's thinking of sex now, just full-blown just thinking of sex.
Well, I'm glad we moved past from the animals dying.
Basic human rights.
Imagine
From 1948 to 1975, the U.S. Army tested chemical weapons on American soldiers at their Edgewood Arsenal factory. These experiments were very classified and affected over 7,000 soldiers. Many of the soldiers were technically volunteers, though they were often misled about what exactly they were signing up for. Like the use of deadly sarin gas, which was accidentally developed by the Nazis while trying to invent a cheap pesticide. Is it just me, or does science feel like a crazy shot in the dark sometimes? Like when you accidentally try and develop a pill for hypertension and then all of a sudden you've made Viagra. Like Grandpappy now has a raging boner. Like that's how it happened. Or you're trying to kill some weeds and then you develop a gas that could kill thousands of people with a click of a button, Whoops! The sarin gas at Edgewood was so strong that birds passing over the gas chambers following sarin tests dropped dead from the sky and regularly had to be removed from the roof. Some subjects of Edgewood's chemical treatment didn't even volunteer at all, like professional tennis player Harold Blawer, whatever. He checked into the New York State Psychiatric Institute in 1952 after a bout of depression following his divorce. Edgewood Arsenal had struck a deal with the Psychiatric Institute that allowed them to secretly test chemicals on patients, and he was injected with 450 milligrams of mescaline and died that following day. In the 60s, psychiatrist Colonel James Ketchum joined Edgewood. He became known as
James Ketchum.
James Ketchum.
He's Ash Ketchum's father! We found him, boys!
Dr. Delirium. Never a good sign when a ranking officer has a name like that. It's like, you know, Colonel Kill-em-all. Not always not good. Dr. Delirium was obsessed with the idea that chemical weapons were more humane than traditional weaponry. He was especially fixated on LSD, which is not good to have an evil scientist be thrown that at people all the time. He believed that the Soviets were stockpiling large amounts of LSD for military use. Veterans who experienced Edgewood claimed that they were going there for military, you know, training, and in reality, they were experiencing chemical weapons and crazy hallucinogenics. Soldiers
Is this where we get the term going on a trip?
would hallucinate for days after their tests and go temporarily blind, and some tried to kill themselves. Many soldiers left that place scarred for life, full depression, tried to kill themselves after they were there, and had full-blown nervous system disorders. So if you're a soldier right now and someone tells you to take a pill, just don't do it. Because I'm guessing this hasn't stopped. Now, it's hard to overestimate the hysteria.
I knew it. Ask Cat's father. The Team Rockets.
I love
that
it.
surrounded the.
You know, it's kind of sad but true. Like, when my dad died, we were told that he couldn't be an organ donor because of the time he served. He could have been exposed to mad cow disease.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cold War. Even a rumor or error in reporting could lead to decades of top-secret experiments. This is precisely how the CIA came to develop MK-Ultra. In the 50s, the US was increasingly paranoid that the Soviets were outpacing them in interrogation techniques and technology. A lot of this was based on false reports from the Korean War that Soviet-backed North Koreans developed mind control capabilities. This, to use a technical term, is insane. No one has ever made full mind control possible yet, but the CIA was convinced. In 1953, they created a little number called MK-Ultra. In many ways, MK-Ultra was a continuation of a scientific experiment that started in Nazi concentration camps, so not a good start. Not only were many of the experiments based on Nazis' work, but like I said, Operation Paperclip, they were hiring Nazis to do these experiments. The work was headed by chemist Sidney Gottlieb.
Man, I heard some fucked up, like, conspiracy theories that they use MK Ultra and junk to try to, and something about trying to get psychic powers or some shit.
The movie The Men Stare at Goats. I've seen that movie bits and pieces. I want to see that movie.
Who was known as the Black Sorcerer. And if you're keeping score at home, yes, that is another comic book level supervillain name. The Black Sorcerer was desperate to find a truth serum to use while interrogating prisoners of war. And while he never fully developed mind control, they were using things like LSD to really see how easy it is to interrogate someone when they are completely blasted off into outer space. In the early 50s, the Black Sorcerer arranged for the CIA to buy the entire world's supply of LSD for $240,000. Ironically, that means the CIA was responsible for bringing LSD, the drug that really pushed the counterculture in the 60s, to America. And due to the classified and unethical nature of the experiments, the project spread across 80 different institutions like college campuses, prisons, and hospitals. Often, the researchers involved didn't even know their work was going towards the CIA, though they may be playing a little coy because these experiments demonstrated a large amount of lack of humanity. From verbal and sexual abuse to electrocutions and torture, it's clear that MK Ultra wanted to break humans. One mental patient in Kentucky was given LSD for 174 consecutive days without his consent.
Oh, damn. He went on a trip that never ended.
Wow, at that point, what is reality anymore?
Others were heavily drugged and sat next to a record that was playing vocal suggestions on a loop, or even left to float in a sensory deprivation tank while accidentally filled up with acid. We still don't know the full extent of MK Ultra because thousands of documents relating to the project were destroyed in the 70s, and I hate to be that guy, but that sounds suspicious as shit. I mean, if you accidentally destroy thousands of documents, you were probably doing some horrifying tasks. Fortunately, if you...
No, there's some shady fucking shit out there, man. There's some shit.
And, oh yeah, the government stopped all in the 70s, and they never went back to it again.
MK Ultra files were misfiled and found during a government investigation of the CIA. And in 1976,
only?
President Ford issued an executive order that prohibited experimenting with drugs on humans without their consent. But, you know, weird that we have to have an order for that. You know, it's like, oh, we'll pass a bill so this doesn't happen again. Why were you doing that in the first place, you f***ing creeps? And while some MK Ultra, experimentation people were scarred for life, there's some, like, big hitters on this list that turned out to be part of MK Ultra. Whether it was a positive experience or not, there's still no doubt that it would change change you. For one, we had Ken Kesey, the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, who had such a great time during his MK Ultra experiments that he would host the iconic acid test in San Francisco that turned a generation onto LSD. So he was into it. He was—
Wait, what? The creator of the person who wrote that story?
Apparently he was a hippie.
Huh.
thrilled to go through that experience.
That was a good
Some
movie.
people are made for LSD. I'll say that. If I ever took an hallucinogenic, I would completely freak out and make my friends call the hospital. But some people take—
What would you do if you were on LSD?
Oh, I don't know what it would do to me.
It's a hallucination. You would see shit that wasn't there. I see you freaking out when you think you saw bugs.
Oh, I hope it wouldn't be something like that. It'd probably be...
Don't ever take meth, because you get a sensation of bugs crawling underneath your skin.
I'm already having a hard time with this fucking heat rash going on.
really kindly to it. And then you have Robert Hunter, the Grateful Dead lyricist, who wrote the lyrics like, "Your rain falls like crazy fingers." So yeah, that checks out. That dude loved acid. And then there was like mob boss Whitey Bulger, the guy from where I'm from, Massachusetts, who was like, you know, the Irish mob, who was a gigantic piece of shit. He was part of MK Ultra too. He was dosed with LSD 50 times while volunteering for experiments in prison. He murdered 11 people. Most disturbingly, out of all of them, was Charles Manson. You know, the guy who's like, "I'm a bum, I'm a wino." Yeah, you ever seen that? Put up the interview he does where he does that.
I'm nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine.
This cult leader used many of the same tactics as MK Ultra, keeping his members on the steady dose of LSD while manipulating them sexually.
Random theory, do you think he might have been originally part of the military or government stuff? How did he get all this ideas?
What do you guys know about that? I've heard that from years, that you always get a sensation of bugs underneath your skin.
Wait, is that what he was asking about, how we know about that?
Oh, no, $10.
Hasty George super chatted $7.29. MK Ultra is still considered a myth and is often labeled as tinfoil hat conspiracy, even though official research documents came to light by accident.
Want to do another moment for us?
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that I don't know. I don't even know anymore. What is real? What is reality? Am I even here?
And while it isn't proven, author Tom O'Neill's book Chaos makes a case Manson being involved in the projects, and I think it's pretty obvious that he actually was part of MK Ultra. But allegedly, although f*** him, it's the CIA. What are they gonna do, sue me? And drugs weren't the only questionable experiments going on during the Cold War. Science in general had a very disturbing think outside of the box vibe. It's obvious that these world leaders were willing to do whatever they could to get an edge over the competition. From using Nazi innovations to torturing their own citizens. But just like the
German technology is the best in all the world.
You're not wrong, because that's how a lot of this shit started.
space race, some of the most imaginative scientist efforts came from the Cold War, involved hellish treatments of animals. MK Ultra, for instance, wasn't only about humans. The CIA was using animals with mind control for some reason. Declassified documents from 1967 show that the US government successfully created a type of mind control in dogs. By electrically stimulating their brains, scientists were able to control their movements by hijacking their reward centers. They achieved this by
This could have been the setting of Plague Dogs, actually.
by embedding an electrode into a mound of dental cement and then implanting that in a dog's skull and running connections past the dog.
Yeah, I remember one of the dogs had something like that. This was probably the time duty-do for Plague Dogs.
Shoulder blades. But once again, what are you gonna get at making it you could just train a dog.
Yeah!
Why are you moving it with electrodes? And the dog can only be controlled within 600 feet, but by hitting buttons, you can make the dog come back, run in a circle, and make it stop. So, whatever, you had a remote-controlled dog. According to government records,
And now we've gotten to the point where we're making tiny little AI brains.
I wonder if he's going to talk about the cat that they put a radio receiver in.
Oh.
6 of these mind-controlled dogs were created, but never were really fully used in the field. And they ran into a bunch of issues while testing this technology, namely, you know, like, infections was a big one. Also, wounds that the dogs suffered from having a wad of cement implanted in their brains, which, you know, overall would hurt efficiency. It would compromise efficiency when their dog brain is swelling. And not to be outdone, the Soviets were doing some weird shit with dogs too. Soviet scientist Vladimir Demikov was a pioneer in organ transplants. He was one of the first guys to do like an organ transplant, a heart transplant, lung transplant, liver transplant. But because this was the Cold War, he was also responsible for another truly unhinged first, the first head transplant. Demikov...
Oh, God.
What the fuck?
started working on head transplants in 1954, performing the surgery over 20 times. And this was hardly top secret work. Demikov saw this as like the next big step in transplant surgery. It was so out in the open that in 1954, Time magazine traveled to Russia to capture the 24th attempt at creating a two-headed dog. They documented the process, which by that time has been done so many.
What fucking, like, but fluid bark shit is going on here?
Yeah, exactly!
Pasty George super chatted $7.29. What is real? How do you define real? If you are talking about what you can see, touch, hear, taste, and smell, then real is just electrical signals interpreted by your brain, Morpheus.
Ah, the Matrix. Damn it. It's so true, Joestar, so true. Thank you again. At this point, I swear you're going to end up just giving us $100 if you keep going. And I'm just going to sit here and moan my head off.
Times in a row that it only took 3 hours to get it done. Both dog heads could hear, see, smell, and swallow,
It
but
looks
they
like
didn't share
Finny!
No, they put a
whatever the transplanted
Pomeranian
head
on
drank
the
flowed onto the
fucking-
floor. You might be wondering what the point of all this was, and that's a very good question. Even though Demikov's early animal transplants paved the way for modern-day organ transplants, there isn't really any good reason for a head transplant. It had no practical medical application whatsoever. And also, it was practically a death sentence for both of the dogs involved. The longest any of these two-headed dogs would live was 29 days. Whatever Demikov's motivations were for this horrific experimentation, it inspired the future work of American scientist Dr. Robert White. But in truth...
Nope. Your name is Dr. Hogback.
Dr. Mangler, more than likely.
No. Come on.
Oh, from Fluid Bark.
Yeah, you pointed that out earlier. Their name's
US
Dr.
fashion,
Hogback.
we used monkeys instead of dogs. Starting in 1970, Dr. White would perform head transplants on over 30 monkeys. And once again, to no scientific benefit did that happen. No reason to do that at all. We learned nothing from these experiments. But hey, two-headed monkey. Though dogs and monkeys were the animal heroes of the Cold War, the US got cats involved with Project Acoustic Kitty.
No!
It sounds
Oh, this
Oh,
one.
is this what you were talking about?
Yes.
No,
the name of a
Kitty!
feline-friendly folk band, but at the end of the day, they were just trying to turn cats into spies, which is interesting. The idea came to agents in 1960 while noticing the feral cats were roaming around unnoticed by government officials during secret meetings. By leveraging the constant presence of cats with their natural curiosity, the CIA developed a plan. They would implant transmitters into cats' necks. And they would train them so they could go near government officials and they could spy in on what people were saying. Or in the crude words of a US officer,
On the bright side, that doesn't sound as bad as transplanting a fucking second head on you.
they slit the cats open, put batteries in him, and wired him up. But sadly, the CIA quickly found out the cats don't do what you want. They couldn't give two about what you tell it to do. And as a cat,
Wouldn't a stray dog been a better choice at that point?
owner,
And
I can
cats
confidently
can do what
say
you
that
want,
the cat at my feet
depending.
right now is an absolute nightmare. Isn't that right, Abby? Yeah, you're a piece of shit. The cats would wander off whenever they got hungry.
Right,
And
broccoli.
hey, you know what?
Oh, $6 million cat to the rescue.
Cats are always hungry. So they added another wire in the cat that would override the cat's hunger. And finally, the CIA was ready to deploy their covert cat spy operation in the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. They released the cat from an unmarked van outside of the embassy. And before it even get going, it got hit by a taxi and died.
I don't even know how this ended.
Well, there goes $6 million.
So, plan over. The project was ditched in 1967, costing 20 million taxpayer dollars. So, glad we got that through. But that
Never mind. It wasn't $6 million. It was $20 million.
In 1960 money.
It was probably $1 billion at that point.
We need some Doge on this.
Ooh.
$20 million was truly just a drop in the bucket. There is no official number, but estimates of Cold War spending easily amounts to trillions dedicated to bombs, drugs, blasting animals into space, and fighting other countries' wars. The end of the 4-decade...
Hey, instead of doing weird, unethical, dangerous, and stupid shit, how about maybe use that money to, I don't know, take care of the citizens? Maybe end world hunger, homelessness, stuff like that would be nice.
But that shit's gay. We can't do that.
conflict was just as murky as its beginnings. For many, it was the fall of the Berlin Wall that signaled the end of this conflict. The Berlin Wall was built in 1961, becoming a physical manifestation of the ideological divide between the East and West. When the citizens of East and West Germany descended upon the wall on November 9th, 1989, they brought picks and axes to literally tear it down. A month later, the US and USSR would verbally declare the war.
Question.
What?
What was the point of the Berlin Wall?
It would separate East and West Germany because at the time it was illegal for East German to go to the West. Kind of like how North Korea and South Korea is divided. It's the same way.
Huh. Why is that a thing that's happens?
But if you made it into West Germany, you technically become a West German citizen. Till the country was reunited after the Cold War.
Huh. Interesting.
Over at the Malta summit, but we already knew that happened. It was the equivalent of your parents telling you they were going to get a divorce when you've been seeing the writing on the wall for at least 4 years. USSR officially disbanded on December 26, 1991, and as the Iron Curtain fell, the German rock Scorpions took the stage. Their 1991 single, Wind of Change, served as a soundtrack to Germany's reunification. Also, conspiracy theorists believe
Quick bang explosion that a lot better about the Berlin Wall.
that the song was written by the CIA to help unify the two sides. I think that's a little far-fetched, but it's fun to talk about. And even though these rumors have been thoroughly debunked, it honestly isn't any crazier than sex spies or two-headed dogs. The legacy of the Cold War is complicated, but it left Russia and America with 5,000 warheads each. So while the immediate threat is gone, the cool breeze of the Cold War haunts geopolitical policy to this day. In events like Russia invading Ukraine or Elon Musk proposing we nuke Mars. Most leaders and politicians are opportunists who...
Wait. Elon Musk seriously proposed to nuke Mars? Is that a thing? Is that really a
take
thing?
fear to consolidate power. It's a tale of
wouldn't
this
be put
time.
past
So maybe
them.
instead of risking
But why?
countless lives to settle our ideological differences, we just need to fully embrace sports diplomacy and turn the Olympics into a violent bloodshed that everyone knows we are...
No. This is what needs to be done. The Olympics needs to change. We're getting to the point where everyone's starting to make robots, okay? Every nation needs to make one big super robot that a pilot can go inside and have a tournament with these robots. And whoever wins gets to be king of the world for that time. And hence the plot of G Gundam.
taking this very seriously. New videos every Saturday and every other Wednesday. Like, comment, and subscribe. And subscribe to Extra Tugg while you're at it. $4 a month. You get a new video. Now you get to see the videos a day earlier, right before they come out. You get to vote on the videos we're going to do later.
Alright, well that was that. That was a great video to react to.
God, that was long as fuck, though.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.